Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. We've recently launched our Patreon page, which can be found at cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon. If you aren't familiar with Patreon, it's an easy way for those who are interested in this show to help out by simply pledging a small amount each month in sponsorship. Now that could be as little as $5 a month, which is about £3.80, or as much as you like. You will enable us to dedicate more time creating more content to help you, including videos, more blog posts, and even more shows. So if you can, head over to cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon and get involved. In this episode, we talked to Sean Martz about moving into the world of development from the world of systems administrator. Shawn works as a software consultant in the Cleveland, Ohio area and is passionate about effectively solving business problems with technology. He considers himself to be a serial hobbyist and foodie. Shawn will frequently describe himself as a remarkably stupid developer. Welcome to The Cynical Developer, Shawn.
Hey James, thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you for taking some time out today to come and talk to us about your journey from the dark side over to the promised land.
Yeah, it was the cookies that got me.
Come to the dark side. We have cookies.
That's right. Exactly.
So I think to start with, systems administrator can be a slightly vague job title. What was it exactly that you did as a systems administrator?
Yeah, it's intentionally vague. I did both systems and network administration for a local municipality. So everything from managing servers to running wire to desktop support, Active Directory, Windows, database administration, the whole kit and caboodle.
Sure. So you were like the whole entire IT help desk and an infrastructure guy.
Correct. I was one half of it.
Sure. So you made the move into being a developer. How long have you been a developer for?
I've been a developer for about 3 years now.
Okay. And was it a good move?
Yes. So the move itself was tricky, but I do not regret it.
Cool. And I'm a .NET developer, and there are hundreds of different developers that you can become out there. What technology stack did you choose to go for?
Yeah, so the Cleveland, Ohio area is pretty much a .NET city. So I also went with .NET. So mostly Microsoft stack on top of an SPA stack. So Angular, AngularJS, C#, SQL Server.
Right, and that was solely driven by the community that you were in, the businesses that surrounded you, and the job opportunities then?
Absolutely, yeah. I like to say C# by day, Python by night.
Right. Okay. So you do a bit of Python as well. Is that because you found that more interesting than doing C#, or it was just one of those cool things that all the cool kids were talking about?
Python's both interesting and cool. It's kind of like you just write pseudocode and it works.
Right. Yeah, because people always say to me, how did I end up being a .NET dev? And I sort of fell into being a VB6 developer. I'm
sorry? You said VB6, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. It was painful. But yeah, so the natural progression was to move to VB.NET and then to C#, and that's how I ended there. And I always look at stuff like Python and go, do you know what? I will do that at some point. And I've been saying that for probably the past 7 years, if not more.
Yeah, it's tricky to break into a new language because you're so comfortable in another language that you spend a lot of time looking up, how do I do X in Python? How do I do Y in Python? And it's just stupid stuff that you're like, you know what, if I had just written this in C#, I'd be done already.
Yeah, and I always sort of sit and think about the fact that if the only tool you've got is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So it's that the fact that because I don't know Python, I don't know if it would suit the problem that I'm working on better than C#. But I know the .NET stack is now pretty broad and it covers so many different bases, but there's still got to be cases there where something like Python or one of the other languages is going to be a better fit, and it's always a bit of a balancing act, because I could get it done right now in the next half an hour in C#, or I could spend the next month picking up a new language to actually get the same solution, but it be slightly more efficient.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's always a balance of what is the business need versus the technology requirement, right? So when you have something that's time sensitive and deadline critical, it doesn't really matter. You just kind of get it done. But I like to use Python for my relaxing coding, right? So nothing that's time critical. It's stuff that I work on that, it's been in development for a month, and realistically, it's only about 2 days worth of work, right?
Yeah. And I don't think there's any other industry where you go to work all day, you do a certain thing, and you come home, and to relax, what you do is do the same thing that you've done all day.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of paradoxical in that regard.
Yeah. But what we are here to talk about today, rather than the nuances of knowing different languages, is the journey from being a systems administrator into being a developer. So what made you switch career paths?
Yeah, so it was kind of a mix of things. Networking and systems administration was kind of becoming rather routine and, for lack of a better word, boring. So it wasn't as challenging as when I first started. There was an opportunity to move into development with a local development shop, and so I took a risk and I just did it.
Okay. So, did you do any training before it, like boot camps or online courses, or did you just sort of see the opening and go, I'm going to go for that? That looks interesting.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity with a local software company. I knew the owner. I asked if he knew anybody looking for devs. I had done a little bit of dev work in the past, a class way back in high school. So I knew a little bit about development, but I never really got huge into it. And so I had the opportunity. I asked him if he was looking for anyone or if he knew anybody who was looking for a junior developer. And so we grabbed lunch, and he said, if you can put together an SPA app within about a week, send it over and we'll talk. So I went straight from that lunch. I bought a case of Red Bull and a C# book and stayed up late every day that week trying to figure out what the heck an SPA app is and get that over to him.
Nice. So he set the challenge, and you raised or rose to that challenge to get your foot in the door. That's it's a nice story on how you actually got into development, that and really nice of him to give you that opportunity.
It was, yeah. So in a way, it was sort of foreboding of my development career. Everything was working when I sent it over to him, and then when we went to review it, it broke. Right. So it's kind of foreboding of every demo I've ever done.
Yeah.
That this is working. I know it's working. But he was also a developer, so he understood. He laughed it off. Looked at the code, said it wasn't complete garbage, so he gave me a shot.
Yeah. And I remember when I was looking for my first development job, and fresh out of university after doing my comp sci degree, and kept getting told that either I was overqualified or underexperienced and just couldn't get that first foot in the door. So actually knowing somebody gave you a massive benefit there, because you were able to sort of say, look, do you know anybody? Give me a chance maybe. And he gave you that chance, and it gave you that foot up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not changed very much, right? So junior developers now trying to get in anywhere you can. Take your licks if you have to. Take a pay cut, but get experience for your first job, and then everything else will fall into place from there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that I've seen being bandied about quite a lot recently is the summer internships and things like that. It's not a massive thing over here in the UK, but I know that a lot of the companies in the States will do unpaid or paid internships where you can go and get some experience of being a developer, or at least being close to the developers.
Yeah, definitely take advantage of all of those if you can. However you get experience actually touching code, and make sure that you put that on your resume as something that you can speak to.
Yeah, definitely. So was it an easy transition to make from being a help desk guy to a dev? Because I know I've had conversations over the years with network admins, with help desk people, and it's a slightly different mindset and a different approach to the world of IT. How did you find that switch?
Yeah, it was incredibly difficult for me, actually, specifically that mindset switch that you mentioned. I think with networking and system administration, there tends to be, there are shades of gray as to how correct something is, but for the most part, it's either correct or it's not, right? It's very binary. It's either working or it's not. Whereas with software development, there are far more nuanced shades of gray, we'll say, as to how correct any given solution is. So something could work but still be wrong. It could, the code could compile and it could do what you think it's doing, but it's not up to snuff in that it won't, tests need to be written, it needs to be able to be modified. What the client is asking for is actually not what they're asking for. So you have to learn to really read into what they're asking for and what the business requirement is, not what the feature is.
Yeah, and I guess there's a limited thing that limited set of requests that you would get in as a network admin or a help desk administrator, because generally it's going to be like, can you set up this router, this laptop? Can you set up a user? Can you reset a password? That sort of thing. And it's quite easy to go dun, 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 done. And I've got a process for every single one of those changes that we have to make. But what lands on your desk as a developer can vary wildly from day to day, really.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some things might be very articulate in what needs to happen, right? So do X, do Y, do Z, push that to production, test it, and you're good to go. And then other times it's just make the thing work.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, what does that mean? What do you mean make the thing work? They're like, you'll talk to an end user and they'll just say something like, oh, it should work like how it used to. And so then you have to go dig through all that stuff and figure out what they're talking about. And then you finally get to, oh, that's what you meant. Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. I think it takes us back to that. I guess you'd call it a meme now, but it's been around a lot longer than that, which is the comic strip of the tree with a swing on it of what the customer said they wanted, what they really wanted, what they actually needed, what your boss told you that they wanted, what they expected, what the spec said they wanted, and there's like a myriad of different things, and all they wanted was a piece of rope hanging from a tree with a bit of wood on the bottom that they could sit on.
Right, absolutely. It takes a long time, or it took a long time for me to understand that what they're asking for may not actually be what they're asking for.
Yeah, so you said earlier that your previous role had become a little bit boring, and it stagnated a little bit. So what are some of the positives that are coming out of your new role as a developer?
Yeah, so some of the positives that came out of it was, I get to think more, right? I get to solve these weird challenges that come up, and it's much more mental to try and think about things and simulate them in your mind versus just running wire and setting up a network. For me, setting up networks was much more cut and dry, and it was just routine, right? I could turn my brain off when I was doing it, so it was a little bit easier. So this is definitely more challenging, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, I can see that. I did the first part of the Cisco CCNA twice. I did the first half of it. This is before what we've got now, where the CCNA is broken down into sort of like 4 or 5 different sections now, maybe more. And when I was in college, we did
the ICND 1 and 2.
Yeah. So we did that, and they said, "Oh, you can come back after you finish the college course and do the second part." And I'm like, "Great," because I'd be qualified for Cisco networking. That never happened. I went to university to comp sci. We did Cisco networking there in the second year, and they said, "In the third year, we will continue this, but you can come back after the degree and do the second part of it." And I was like, "Oh, fantastic!" Came back in the third year, and they got rid of Cisco, and we were doing Windows networking. So I never got to that point of actually going into networking, and that was a route I was actually going to go down because I liked that part of it. But as you say, some of it is quite mundane, and you don't really think about it. You were just sticking cables in the back of computers, and that's about it. But I know one of the parts that you had to think about, and maybe with experience it becomes second nature, but it was configuring the routers or routers by Telnet. That always threw me. I always had to go and lock that up and think about that bit.
Yeah. That's unless you're doing that every day, the autocomplete is your friend there. And I had a cheat sheet that I kept with me anytime I was doing that. We didn't have anything crazy complicated, so I got lucky in that regard.
Yeah, so maybe that just speaks more about how unprepared I was that I didn't get myself a cheat sheet. Really?
Well, hey, maybe that's a good thing, because we would have had the cynical network admin if you did do that. And I think that's just a regular network admin, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it probably would have made for quite a boring podcast. I'm claiming my podcasts are interesting there, if I do say so myself. But
I think they are. So
thank you.
You've got one
much.
fan at least.
Well, that makes it all worth the time and the money and the effort. That's fantastic.
But I like hearing myself talk too, so I'll just play this episode on repeat.
Yeah, and if you've got it downloaded, you can play it as much as you like to your heart's content.
Oh, fantastic, thanks.
So we've said about some of the positive differences or the positive points to come out of changing roles, and touched on some of the downsides to your previous role. Is there anything that you miss about being a sysadmin?
I don't think so. No, maybe I probably work a little bit more now as a developer. I don't think it's something that comes natural to me, like a lot of your prodigy developers, right? So people just completely understand this from the get-go. I'm not one of those developers, so I definitely work a little bit more, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, not at all. And I think it sets you apart from everyone else, because I've recently made the jump into the contracting world, and most contracting developers that I speak to, they do their 9 to 5, they go home, they don't think about the job, whereas I'm doing my 9 to 5. We had a big push on a product this week, and the last few nights I've come home and been thinking about it and sort of going through the processes in my head. I was stood in the kitchen this morning drinking my morning coffee with my notepad, sketching out architectures and data flows and things like that. And I think there are times where you do want to just cut that out and do the 9 to 5, but it is very hard. I even schedule time out of my week on a Monday evening, I have a minimum of 2 hours that I call learning time, and I go and I do research. So I look into new technologies, or I go and brush up on some of the basics. So reading some of the books and that are out there for different things, unit testing, different programming models and all that sort of thing. And I don't think you get that with many other careers as such. There are careers where you go home and you have to do research and you have to learn because you have to take tests and things to stay up to date. But I don't think that's a requirement for a developer, and a lot of people that I work with find it very odd that I do stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not a requirement for a developer, but that's a requirement for anyone who wants to stay relevant, right? So if you're happy in your role, you're 9 to 5, and you're doing that for the next 10 years until you retire, absolutely. But if you want to, stay current and be caught up and really understand what's going on in the state of development right now, not that you could ever know anything, but you definitely have to make sure that you're constantly taking time out just to research and just to learn. And it's okay to research basic stuff and stuff that you quote unquote should know at this point in your career. I consider myself a remarkably stupid developer, so I always look up the basics and always try and anything new that I'm looking up, I take a cynical approach to it. Like, okay, what does this mean? What does this do for me? How does this help me? And really try and boil it down to those basics so that I know when to use the technology that I've been looking up or researching.
Yeah. And I think that sort of transitions quite nicely into the next question, which is what would be some key bits of advice to people wanting to change career, change direction with what they're doing and become a developer? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say do it, definitely. Some piece of advice, I would say a couple things actually. First, pay for something like Pluralsight or find good Udemy courses that explain not just how to do something in a certain framework or a certain language, but more importantly, why you're doing it that way. I think Pluralsight's a fantastic resource. I also have bought quite a few courses off individual authors on Udemy or off their own websites themselves. The guys who really explain why you're doing something. That's what you really want to look for. Why are we doing this? Second, I would say find a community to be a part of. I found fantastic support with the Coding Blocks community Slack. There are a ton of supportive people out there, and you can ask any question and get a well-informed answer or opinion even. And then third, don't be afraid to look stupid. It's okay to ask a question to something that you should know. And if you're consistently asking that question, write it down, develop yourself a cheat sheet. But nobody is going to know everything there is to know about development. So definitely keep asking questions, keep asking why.
Yeah, I think those are 3 bits of advice that I definitely should have obtained at some point during the early days of my career, because I've definitely found myself in the situation where I know how to build something, I know how it should be built, but I didn't know why it gets built that way. I just took it as gospel that that's how you do it. And people would often ask me, well, why are we doing it this way? And I'd go,
because that's the way it's done.
Yeah. And you then start to look slightly incompetent for what you're doing because you can't explain it. So asking those questions when you're in that situation. So, for example, someone had said that to me, why'd you do it this way? And I could go, I don't know. Let me go and ask someone that does know. And I could go and ask that question, come back and go, this is why. And then out of that, I've learned why. The person that asked me the question has learned why. And because I've had to learn it to then tell someone else, then I think it embeds a little bit better in your own brain as well. At least for me, if I'm learning something to teach it to somebody else or to talk to someone about it, it sits in my mind so much easier than just going and reading something about it.
Right. Yeah. I try and make sure I understand everything well enough that I could explain it to a 5-year-old. Right. So I don't need to know it in full detail, but I need to understand the gist of it and what it's doing underneath everything so that I can summarize it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And getting involved in a community is fantastic. And as you said, Coding Blocks guys have got a great Slack channel out there to go and join. And I've said to the listeners before, I do have a Slack channel, but I don't push it and put it out there for people to come and join. I sort of keep it for my own ramblings and little side projects and stuff, because the community that is in the Coding Blocks Slack channel is amazing. It's second to none in any of the communities that I've dealt with. There's not really that many bad eggs in there, if any, now anyway. And everybody is so positive and so happy to help when you've got a question. And we've all got questions. We all need to ask somebody something at some point, because no matter how far you are in your career, there's always going to be that person that's 2 steps ahead of you, and there's always going to be that person that's 2 steps behind you. So not only when you ask that question are you learning, the people behind you learn as well.
Yeah, definitely. Don't feel like you don't have anything to offer just because you're a junior. You know, like you said, you're still 2 steps ahead of somebody else, and you can teach them what you now know, right? And definitely for the solo developer out there who's been on their own for a little bit without anybody more senior to them, you know, it's always helpful to have a code review of, hey, can somebody look over this and see if I'm doing anything stupid? You know, and everyone in that Coding Blocks Slack is willing to take their own time out of their own day to help you out and say, hey, you know, it might be better if you did this, or have you considered trying this?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is there. And I think being a part of a community, even if you're the only developer, is a massive benefit, because like we said, if you're happy in your day-to-day job and that's where you want to stay, you don't want to move, you could spend the next 10 years doing something the way you think is the best way to do it, and ignorance is bliss. You might find that there's a better way to do it, which makes your day job even easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, why would you not want to work smarter, right? That's why we're all developers, is we all love that mental challenge of building something. So we always want to try and find the most optimal way to do it. So why not get some second opinions?
Yep, exactly. So I think what we can take from this episode is that if you are not yet a developer and you are on a different career path and you are thinking about becoming a developer, I think what Shawn has said is do it. Actually take the jump, get stuck in, and don't look back. But make sure that you go out there and you've got that drive to push yourself, to do a bit of self-improvement and self-learning. And I think if you have already thought about improving your situation by making a career shift, then you got to have that drive at least a small bit already. You just need to nurture it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's well put.
Cool. So thanks again to Shawn for coming on and talking to us about moving from a systems administrator into the world of development.
James, thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. And you're welcome to come back and we can shoot the breeze about something else. I know we've been involved together, not in that way, but over in the Coding Blocks.
Wait, we have?
Do you not remember?
No.
Too much alcohol. Yeah, sorry. Back on track. We were involved in a roundtable event with the Coding Blocks guys over on their YouTube channel, so definitely jump over and check that out. And Shawn's got a lot to say that is very relevant. So don't let
Not all of it's relevant.
Don't let.
But I do have a lot to say.
Yeah. Don't let the fact that he's only been a developer for 3 years sort of cloud your judgment of anything he's got to say. He may put himself across as a remarkably stupid developer, but he's definitely got some gems of wisdom in there as well.
Well, thanks, James. My head's getting big over here.
Well, credit where credit's due. But I think that's all we've got time for today. So thank you for listening to Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and you've been listening to Sean Martz talking about becoming a developer. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help the Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.